Hello, good evening, or good day to you from wherever you may be joining us today. Happy International Education Week to all of you, to one and all. May it be happy ever after, or at least certainly happier than it has been of late. I would like to just remind you as a quick note that this webinar is being recorded. We are honored to have you all with us today. My name is Elena Corbett, and I am the Director of Education Abroad at Amideast. Over the course of the pandemic, we at Amideast Education Abroad have been having events like these to try to talk about things that very few others are talking about. We have focused on the Middle East and North Africa as one part of the Global South and highlighted colleagues who are not based in the Global North. Today, I am so fortunate and privileged to be joined by two of our dear faculty colleagues, Dr. Mjriam Abu Samra, who has taught many courses with us in Jordan, but is also our community-based learning professor and coordinator, and Dr. Rachid Touhtou, who also wears many hats, but teaches and coordinates our community-based learning course in Morocco. Thank you both so much for your time. Dr. Mjriam, Dr. Rachid, I'm so pleased to be here with you today. And when we see each other in person, which we haven't in a very long time, these are the kinds of discussions that we have. And I truly miss you both. And I'm looking forward to doing this in person sooner rather than later. So thank you so much for being here with us today and your time, your wonderful time and valuable time. Before Dr. Mjriam and Dr. Rachid talk about their work, I wanted to provide some quick context for today's focus on community-based learning, particularly vis-a-vis internships. As Amideast, we have and continue to run internships on a customized basis, but we have very complicated feelings about them. I will explain. We're an organization that has been working in one part of the Global South for more than 70 years. And when we welcome young program participants from the US into our host countries, we have a responsibility to work with deliberate awareness of the respective positionalities of our host community members and our participants. So on a spectrum, weighing benefit to the individual participant in an internship versus the host community, the participant, of course, is the primary beneficiary. That's the point of an internship. But given the legacies of colonialism generally and how they continue to play out in education abroad specifically, that's incredibly problematic. Internships such as they are in the US and some other contexts are not so readily available in our host countries. They also require a particularly intensive collaboration among organizations and, we believe, should be available firstly to young people from our host communities who should be compensated monetarily and or with academic credit or a meaningful credential. When we can support equity in this way, we are pleased to do so. In other words, every internship opportunity for a Global North participant should be met with the same opportunity for a young person from the host community, and the host community student should be paid. As education abroad in the US is, however, ultimately a relationship driven by clients, and the equity discourse isn't generally so radical, internship programming rarely allows us to seek this ideal. This is why community-based learning continues to form the basis of our approach to supporting participants in work experiences abroad. As an organization, we therefore pay a double price. Not only does the neoliberal market for education abroad dictate that our region of the world is the most maligned, least traversed, and siloed into securitization frameworks, but positioning ourselves as we do vis-a-vis the problematics of internships is a liability when internships are such a critical part of the market. Off my soapbox. Without further ado, the work that Dr. Mjriam and Dr. Rachid do with community-based learning is rooted foremost in their academic interests. And I'd like to ask them to introduce themselves and talk a little bit about how they became interested in the work of local community-based organizations. I'm going to start with Dr. Mjriam and then Dr. Rachid. Dr. Mjriam.
Hi, Elena, and everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm really honored and happy to participate to this very important event. It's an important week, and it is even more important for us who are trying to contribute to the educational programs and to development of new ways of engaging with the global south, being in part of the global south. So as Elena has just said, my name is Mjriam, and I teach the community-based learning course at Amideast in Jordan. I've been teaching it for the past, I think, 6 or 7 years now. I also teach other courses at Amideast, political courses mainly, and I also work at University of Jordan, where I am now a researcher focusing on gender and masculinities in the Middle East. So I am actually half Italian, and half Arab. So CBL has actually been a very interesting place for me for also making use, let's say, of my identity. I should say that when at the very beginning I started teaching at Amideast and in different other institutes in Jordan, I wasn't absolutely interested in teaching the CBL course. I think this is something I really want to share with you all, because it really relates to what Elena was just telling us a few moments ago, and it is in fact the specific perspective that Amideast has provided on the CBL and on how we engage, with the opportunities to engage with local institutions, with local organizations for our students, that really made the difference, and that made me really, I really felt privileged to have the opportunity to teach the CBL course in Jordan, and to actually provide a different perspective of how we are engaging with local communities, with local organizations, and how we can actually use this space to question our positionalities. So this is how I actually became interested, by just like having the opportunity to engage with CBL from a different perspective, and becoming aware that we can actually bring this different perspective into our classrooms, which was something I didn't think it was possible until Amideast. So yeah, but maybe we should continue later. Sorry, I know I start talking and I never end. Maybe Rachid wants.
I think this is why we all get along so well. Rachid, please.
Thank you, Elena. I'm also very happy to be with you here, and happy International Education Week. I am an educator and a researcher, and that's the only thing I know. And the only thing I am passionate about and love is education, and especially changing others. And when I discovered Amideast, or Amideast discovered me, I become like very passionate about teaching American students, because I feel that I'm contributing to knowledge sharing with them about the Middle East. We have a specificity in North Africa. We are North Africans, different from the Levant, Mjriam. And I am an Amazigh person, so I speak Middle Atlas Berber, Amazigh, which is a native mother tongue of North Africa, like in Algeria and Tunisia. So I started with Amideast in 2015. As a political science professor, I taught a class on political systems of the Maghreb, which is the countries in the Maghreb countries. For people who don't know, it's Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, Mauritania, and Libya. And then I moved to CBL, which is my cup of tea. So I am both a researcher on social movements and civil society, and I teach here in Morocco, in Rabat, in the National School of Statistics and Applied Economics. I teach engineers who work with local communities. So in fact, I am doing the same job with Moroccans and with Americans. So I feel when I move in both classes, I feel no change. The only change is the cultural or the intercultural dimension, which I find more interesting with the American students. So community-based learning, I will not repeat what Dr. Elena said, but this is a passionate class, you know, it's not a normal class. I'm not thinking of like internship, like as a strict internship where the students is happy to get a CV or whatever, but I have success stories, you know, I have students of mine who now she's in CNN, she works with Amantia Por even, you know, so CBL, which is a community-based learning, is a class of all classes. It's a class about race, about identity, about space, about intercultural competence, and about crossing the frontiers and going beyond your comfort zone as an American who will work with community-based organizations. When I work with community-based organizations, we work with different communities. You know, it can go from the migration community, refugees, like Fondation Orient-Occident. We work with feminists, with organizations that fight for access, like equal access to justice. We work with family planning associations, with HV association. Now we have students are on the ground who work with a think tank. It's the Arab Science think tank. They work with also with think tank. We have students in the past who worked with think tanks, and they did an amazing job. They worked on a national report on trust, which is quoted really very well in different disciplines. And we have students who work with OPAS, which is a HIV NGO that does a medical job, and at the same time sensitization about HIV among the migrants and refugees and the sex workers in Morocco. So this is a very difficult class, you know, not any professor can go to the CBL. Mjriam can confirm this. This is a class that consumes all your time, you know, from before the students arrive. We fight to secure placements. We have to take them to the placement. We have to make sure we have supervisors. We have to make sure there is safety for our students from different issues that can arise, like harassment. You know, my phone is on the alert, my email is on the alert, and until the students depart, that I breathe, you know, that my students are safe and they are back to. So community-based learning it's a big opportunity for American students to discover the culture from inside, because they are dealing with natives, to discover the you know, the present issues of the country and how local knowledge is dealing with local issues, you know. So it's not an exotic space where the American come with their background to help the others from the global side. No, it's a learning process, and both of them can learn. I stop here, Elena, because I will not stop from talking. But I think the introduction is enough, and I'm waiting for other comments or your comments. Or okay.
Great. Thank you so much, Rachid. And I think something that you both brought out a lot is just the kind of the personal investment that goes into this, and that ability to affect, right? I mean, we have kind of global, you know, very hegemonic, we wrestle in our spaces with very hegemonic paradigms, both about the production of knowledge, but also the directionality of knowledge. And I mean, what you've both touched on is this critical aspect of, you know, the value, like the primary value in the local context of local knowledge, and the importance of sending knowledge south-north instead of the other way around. You already both started to touch on this to some extent, but I'm wondering, you know, it's been a rough 20 months, right? I mean, I think it's an Elena states the obvious, but if you could both talk a little more about some of the local organizations that we work with, and what those organizations experienced during COVID. And I know that I've spoken with both of you to a little bit about kind of what politically and economically and socially sort of what they faced, you know, during this time. And then the second part of this question is, you know, as a the universal we, as we begin to consider this transition from pandemic to endemic COVID, how have these organizations and their work changed? I think I'll start this time. We'll start with Rachid, and then we'll pass to Mjriam, if that works for you.
Okay, thank you, Elena. So I think this is a very interesting question and debate. You know, from the Moroccan side, you know, like 90% shut down. You know, like a lot of NGOs were lost in the beginning. To be honest, they were lost what to do, especially the ones who receive beneficiaries like refugees and migrants. But some of them with time tried to adapt to new situations. You know, I can tell you that when we got students for this fall, when we went there, we went to the headquarters, and I was amazed at how this association, which is Adala Association, has equipped themselves with all the necessary technology, like cameras were there, internet was very good, and we can see others online, and we are in the headquarters. You know, the president was online talking to us, and we were in the headquarters. So it started as a crisis. Of course, we know the community organizations, or what we call in Morocco associations and NGOs, you know, they depend mainly on international funding, you know. So the NGO sector, and Mjriam can confirm that the NGO sector in the whole, what we call the Middle East and North Africa, depend on international funding. And during COVID, international funding was redirected to the needs of, you know, local countries, so they will not help others. So there was a need for more funding. They lack project because they work on projects, and projects were, you know, stopped. International funding stopped. Unfortunately, there was state measures also who helped sometimes either facilitated, you know, life in the country, but complicated life for NGOs who could not receive you know, funding. That's why, you know, when we receive American students in local organizations, you know, these NGOs breathe some air, because at least these American students can be a witness to report the amazing jobs they do locally to the international community, you know. And we have always this debate. So when I take first-time students to the community, they will always ask them, can you write grants? Can you help us write grants, you know? So then I have to interfere to them, no, these are students who want to learn from us. We can learn from them. It's a win-win situation, you know. It's never one-way knowledge sharing, as Elena says. So it was a learning process in the beginning, crisis, and then the NGOs luckily tried to adapt to the new situations by buying, you know, technological equipment that will help them in their work. And they started talking about online community, you know, project. We can have community online tasks, and even students, if they are not on site, we can still help them. But believe me, it was hard for everybody. You know, you felt it for sure, and everybody felt. And the community organizations are the last in the hierarchy of the whole new liberal system. So you can imagine. I can give you one example. We have in Morocco, Rabat, is Fondation Orient-Occident. And this Fondation Orient-Occident works mainly with refugees. Most of them are from sub-Saharan Africa, but also with Yemenis and Iraqis and other groups. And this association has to help these refugees during this COVID-19 quarantine and post-quarantine. And you can imagine how difficult it was for them to help these refugees. So I am happy now that things can go to the normal situation. And I'm talking about Morocco. So now it's really, we are in the COVID situation? I hope so, and things are getting well. We have students now on site, and they have no issue moving around, meeting the supervisors, spending their time in their placements. I stop here. I give
Thank you
to Mjriam.
so much. Mjriam, how about in the what have you seen? How have things worked? Where are they in the Jordan context?
Yeah, well, things in Jordan were very, very similar to what Rachid was saying about Morocco. What I would say is that, of course, the COVID pandemic for NGOs has highlighted even more the relations of dependency that these organizations have on international funds, exactly for what Rachid was saying. Of course, the situation in Jordan is particular because, as most probably many of you know, the NGO sector is quite big in Jordan. We have a huge number of refugees that are supported by the work of international and local NGOs and international institutions, the UN, and so on. So we have several different actors, being active in Jordan. The situation was particularly complicated for the local organization. International organization could still rely on, their network, of being international, or having an HQ back home, or having some kind of, support, while local NGOs were more, of course, they actually depended on the availability of funds and how these funds would be invested. So I would say that first of all, I should say that actually when we went back to our CBL course this fall, and we were able to actually welcome students back, we started working, of course, already in the summer to arrange for placement. And I was actually quite surprised to see that basically all the organizations we work on managed to survive the pandemic. So I didn't expect that. There was a lot of confusion, that's for sure, because no one really know how they. I would say that many actors in Jordan in general, and of course, some of the organizations who work with us, don't even know how they managed to survive this crisis. And but yes, what we notice is that, and we are noticing even now, is that they try to readjust their strategies, their focus, even, for example, the aim of their organization themselves. So somehow, sometimes just like following the funds, and so even changing a little bit the aim and the focus of the organization in order to being able to to access this kind of support. Many of them, and I can give you the example of one of the organizations that has been working with us for a few years, which is SILA, which is an organization working on archaeology specifically. They actually managed to start a online program of internship for international students in order to maintain some kind of international connection. But at the same time, you could see the frustration in this kind of local work, and in seeing how their local presence was endangered by the lack of funds that would be invested in the work that they would do. So yes, so there was this frustration, this confusion. Likely they all managed to go through the COVID, and now they are trying to readjust. They are all trying to understand how they can, first of all, access again some kind of financial support in terms of international funds coming to support their activities, planning new activities that can be related to the new kind of focus that donors have, and at the same time, yes, as Rachid said, also considering online and virtual bilingual cooperation, especially when it comes to CBL, for example. We were lucky enough. I should say that, for example, one of the main issues for us was actually with ACOR, which is another archaeological organization that works in Jordan. It's an American organization, and they didn't know if it would be possible for them to actually host one of our students in presence. And at this point, in this, this specific term, now that we actually had the opportunity to bring back our students in Jordan, we were really keen in giving our students the opportunity to go and experience, their placement in person, as long as it was possible. So that was something that we had to deal with. But in general, yeah, they're all going back to more or less, normal engagement with their work and with the community, of course, and also with our students. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much. So much change, both in bad ways, but also in very hopeful ways, right? I have one last question for the both of you, and then of course we will have lots of time to take questions from everybody who's joined us today. I hope you're going to have some questions, big questions, small questions. We love questions. But my last question for both of you is, what would you, and this is great because we also have, I've noticed, looking at some of the names of people who have joined us today, we have some colleagues from US universities who advise participants on our programs as they're considering different programs and choosing to come to our program. So this is really critical. What would you want prospective participants to know about coming to work with local organizations as we embark on this sort of new era after the worst of the pandemic? What important, if we're talking about tools, for instance, and attitudes, what important tools and attitudes would you like them to bring with them? And what should they do to prepare? We'll start with Mjriam, and then we'll turn it over to Rachid.
Okay. So yeah, this is something that I think is very important for students to know when they come here. Again, I should say that CBL is probably the best teaching experience I've had so far, exactly because of the reasons and then the different aspects that I will try to explain now. CBL is not just a course for learning about the Middle East and other regions. It's not just an opportunity to see. CBL is a course that is, and this is something I always tell our students as soon as they arrive, CBL is also a course that allows us to learn about ourselves. And this is something that our students need to know, because there is no way to actually make the CBL course beneficial for our students as long as we don't understand that this is a course where we need to question our positionality. We need to be ready to challenge the different power relations that inform our daily exchanges as students, as Westerners coming to this part of the world. So there are different layers that we need to unpack, the different aspects that we need to consider when we, in order to make sure that we really benefit from the CBL course. I think that the first thing that our students should know is exactly that probably the CBL is a course that might make us feel uncomfortable, because we will have to deal with so much that we take for given, so much, Orientalism and, so much expectation that are not met by the reality. And that's not a problem with the reality. reality. That's a problem with the expectation that we come with, you know. So this is something that we need to consider, you know, being ready to engage with our own positionality and with our own understanding and with our own expectation. The other thing is being able to observe. This is something I also often tell our students. It is very important to understand that the CBL, again, as you all already point out, and Rachid was also said, CBL is not a place where we come to volunteer and to save the world, because this is actually the opposite of what we're doing here. Okay, we are actually understanding that probably we as different societies, or we as, you know, actors in the international system, contribute to an unbalanced power relation that shouldn't be there, and it's not our presence or you know, a term in a local organization that is going to change that dynamic. It is instead the way we embrace the experience, the way we are ready to observe and to learn and to question things around us that are going to facilitate our process of understanding how we can cooperate, what kind of network, what kind of alliances, what kind of contributions, what kind of framework we can recreate, we can bring back home and try to disseminate and try to discuss with our friends, that is going to you know, to really make the difference. So being able to observe, this is something very important. We have a lot of students that are often frustrated because they say, well, I'm not doing much in my placement. I sit there and there is no much work for me to do. And I ask them, let's try to think together, what is the work you can do? You know, let's try to think from the perspective of the organization, these people who are welcoming you, who are welcoming us, you know, and are giving their space to us so that we can learn about them, about us being there, and so on. What kind of work can we contribute with? You know, as you know, very often students who are just learning the language, who are just knowing the region, who are just knowing, you know, the kind of work that the organizations are doing, and so on. So this is something that I would advise, being able to feel sometimes uncomfortable, because again, as I was saying, we are going to discuss and to rethink and to reflect on our positionalities and the power relations that you know, that this whole system brings with it, and being able to observe.
Thank you so much. Exactly. Amen. Rachid.
I say to students, this is not a course for anyone. So it's not a course for any students who wants to come. Any students is welcome. But we need special students, so students who take risks, students who are comfortable when they cross the cultures. So it's a cross-cultural learning experience. So it can be a shocking experience. You know, if you are placed in an NGO where the nature of work is different, where the space management is different, and when the cultural relations are different. So students need to come with readiness to learn, with humble readiness to learn. It's a negotiation, it's a cultural negotiation from both sides, okay? So don't bring, you know, ready-made matrices, you know, from global development studies, and then you come to Rabat to help solve, find people. So people are living here, they are surviving, they have their own ways of solving their pressing issues without the help of anyone. But if you come to cross the cultures and to bring your own knowledge, but juxtapose it with the local knowledge here, then you come up with the best learning experience, you know. In the CBL in Rabat, Morocco, we offer it in French language and we offer it in English, you know. The course content varies and covers leadership, associative leadership, political leadership, and how both of them can come in development issues. There is cross-cultural, intercultural competencies through communication, but through also project-based issues. It's a course in itself, you know. It is an interdisciplinary course of sociology, anthropology, political science, development studies. So I am very humble as a person, but I would say that CBL in itself is a whole, is a whole syllabus that should have been, you should give it time and energy, because for me, I took it as this. So there is theory in the classroom, but there is applications in the placement. So my students would see, you know, when I discuss the race issue in Morocco, I want them to go and reflect in essays or bring me stories of racial issues. When I tell them there is a verbal and non-verbal culture in the Moroccan context, and I give examples, and I want them to go to the placement, observe, as Dr. Mjriam say. You know, we as researchers, we use eyes sometimes more than I told, just use your eyes. Use your eyes, bring stories, and the classroom we solve. You know, we understand how things are negotiated in the space. I advise them, you know, can you invade the space of Moroccans when they are in the NGO? Don't wait for them to give you tasks, you know. Go and invade their space. Tell them I am here for you. Give me tasks, you know. This is a culture of shame, of shuma, we say in Darija. This is a culture that do not want to exploit others who are not paired, you know, in the jobs. It's different from a liberal perspective. So I told them, understand the culture, understand the nature of work, and you will understand the whole of Morocco. So it's a very good introduction, and maybe a deep introduction to the culture of work and culture itself, with capital C, into the Moroccan context. So community-based learning is a course that really impact students. I have now students in Facebook who are my friends, and through email and WhatsApp, sometimes they tell me, okay, professor, write to me a letter of recommendation. I want to apply for this job, and I still remember that I got this in my CBL, so how can I use it? So it's a pre, while, and post course. So we don't just give students an amount of knowledge and practice, and then we'll leave them. So they become our friends. We help them, and I am happy when they get very good jobs. You know, some of them even worked with Amideast, you know, and they were managing, you know, they were good in their job. So CBL is a course for students with passion to learn, to have knowledge. And I always have, you know, I was inspired by Chicago School of Thought, and I always use the theory of community-based assets, you know. So I told them, you know, my parents were very poor and my grandparents, but they survived with no international funding and with no international donors, you know. But they have assets, and these assets, it can be social capital and intelligence, and they use their assets to survive. So I told them, understand what's available locally and then build on it, you know, and that's community-based assets approach. And it's a big thing now in development studies. I stop here and then wait for my turn again. Yes, yeah.
Sorry, if I can add just something, you know, not even adding, but I mean, what Rachid was saying was really, really important. So I really want to emphasize it. It is really true that the CBL is a program in itself, because it's true, because we end up like discussing, you know, different themes, different aspects of society, culture, traditions, politics, of course, you know, all the time in class. And, you know, and we do it by bringing the daily experience that our students make on the ground during their placements, and actually even beyond the placements, because eventually we talk about everything. We talk about, you know, the daily engagement engagement with the local community, as they experience it, and as we actually also as instructors experience it. So yes, this is something that I really wanted to emphasize, because very often we ended up, you know, discussing ending up discussing topics that were also related to other courses that they would take, you know, during their term here in Jordan. What I also wanted to say is that the way we try to plan and design the course is also based on you know, understanding that this is a unique opportunity for our students, you know, being on the ground, experiencing in person, you know, everything that otherwise could just be, you know, a theoretical analysis on articles and books that are disconnected from the reality. So it is very important for us to make sure that the Education Abroad program is not, and particularly the CBL, is not just this exotic experience where students can just say, yes, we went to Petra, and you know, we work with this amazing local organization. No, we really want to make sure that our students can see the contradictions that characterize the societies, the culture, the political dynamics, and also, you know, how the international, you know, the international mechanisms are part of the daily life of people here. Okay, so we do pay a lot of attention in this. So we make sure that, you know, we don't end up with just this, you know, very you know, stereotyped image of Jordan, or you know, the region in general. So and one of the main things that I think is also important to mention is that we in order to stimulate this kind of critical approach, in order to favor, you know, a broader understanding of the dynamics on the ground, we often try to organize meetings with relevant actors, with young activists, for example, or with former ministers of Jordan, so that our students can actually directly engage with them, and this can remain, you know, a truly learning opportunity for them while being here.
Thank you so much. And I think just to highlight a couple of things that you both said, Dr. Mjriam and Dr. Rachid. One, I mean, you just touched on this, the idea that the incredible, I mean, what wonderful locations these are for young people studying abroad, and the access that they get, you know, how open, I mean, how many places can you go that you just have unfettered access to, you know, policymakers and this kind of thing. And I mean, you don't get the undersecretary to the undersecretary to the undersecretary. You get, you know, like the prime minister. I mean, it's mind-boggling still after all of these years to someone like myself. And something else that you also both brought out that I just wanted to point out, and then we have lots of time for questions, and I hope everybody out there has them. There's everything that you just touched on vis-a-vis CBL and the importance of positionality, and you know how Mjriam, I wrote it down because it was so quotable. We contributed to this unbalanced situation, right? And we're having, I mean, for most of this period overlapping with COVID, we've been having these very conversations in the United States about domestic issues, right? Race and racism and colonialism and these sorts of things, right? And so I would like to see, ideally, like to see more from the study abroad community here, is this sort of tying these, you know, these are not separate strands of things. Like colonialism didn't just happen in a United States context, and just happen in a Moroccan context, and just happen in a Jordanian context. they all come from the same thing. They all are the same phenomenon. They all have the same foundational things at their foundation, including race and racism and economic domination and power. And as we're having these conversations nationally about, what do we do to both acknowledge and then move beyond that acknowledgement into action and change, like real substantive change, not like frosting on the cupcake of change or whatever. How do we do that? And I'm with you both, and thanks to you and your efforts. You work so hard to make that happen, on our programs, and that's a great privilege that we have. Does anyone have any questions? You can feel free to put them in the chat generally, or you can direct a private message either to, I am here on the Amideast Ed Abroad account, or to some of you know my colleague Justine Pinkerton. You can private message her with a question if you want, or just kick it out there. You also don't have to have questions. We're not trying to, there we go. All right, I've got a couple. And these are great. Okay, these are very practical questions. I love them. Okay, very practically speaking, what does a CBL placement look like in the day-to-day? How do you choose placements for students? How much time do students spend at their placements? What sort of work might they do? And is this course offered every semester? Rachid and then Mjriam?
Yes, I'm happy to answer. It's a great question. So for the CBL, we offer it every semester. So it's every semester. Dr. Elena also mentioned that we can offer it as a customized. We have the experience. We offer the whole internship program as a customized, even in very difficult topics like medical internships. Every semester, how we, there are conditions, of course, and criteria. We select NGOs, either national or international, NGOs who have headquarters, they are known by address, they are legal structures, and they have logos, they have websites, the people are known that there is an NGO recognized for the safety of our students. So students in CBL can go up to 5 hours per week in the placements. It's always, there is a supervisor inside the placement, and the supervisor is the responsible about the daily activities, tasks our students do. We work with different organizations. I mentioned some, like Fondation Orient-Occident is specialized on migration and refugees. OPAS is specialized on HIV sensitization about HIV issues. Association Marocaine de Planification Familiale, like family planning, Moroccan Association is a national state NGO, even presided honorably by a princess. They work on family planning and sensitization about family planning. We work with the Adala, which is a human rights activist, securing equal access to justice for everybody, Moroccans and non-Moroccans. We work with feminist NGOs like Jussour, Forum des Femmes Marocaines. This is a human rights feminist NGO that fight for the right of women access to equal rights with men and equal access to law and reforming the laws. We work sometimes with the Moroccan Association of Human Rights, a radical human rights association. We work with Amnesty International. In journalism, we work with Morocco World News, one of the top electronic newspaper in Morocco. And we work sometimes with international organizations. We've worked with a Belgium NGO for agriculture, and with an international organization working with USAID. So depending on the, what's happening is that we receive students' preferences and CVs prior to the arrival in Morocco. And then we start the placement, what's available, and the needs of the students. When the students arrive to Morocco, the placements are ready to go, but then there can happen a negotiation depending on the students' need. And then there is always plan B. We can move the students depending on sometimes the students go through 2 or 3 placement until the students is satisfied. So it's a daily work, daily reporting. So I work with Colleen, who is managing the program in Morocco. So if in case there is an emergency or there is a need to move the students or there is an issue that is emerged, there is office hours, face-to-face meetings, and of course classes when we talk about issues. Did I answer all the questions? Of course, there is grading, midterm, final term, essays. That's my job as a professor, okay? But the placement takes like about my 70% work. You know, I have to make sure that the students is comfortable in the situation, doing a job, not wasting time, and we react quickly if there is an issue, okay? But most of the time, it's very happy ending. Students are satisfied, their work is recognized. It's even published internationally, and it helps a lot our students, okay? I can still go on, but if I miss a question, please remind me. Elena?
Okay. No.
Mjriam.
Go ahead.
Yeah, okay, no, yeah, exactly. More or less works the same way in Jordan. As Rachid was saying, the main difference is that we have more hour placements in Jordan. Recently, I think a couple of years ago, we changed the amount of hours that students would spend in their placement, and now we raised it to 8 to 12 hours per week. While our classes in-class seminars are 1 hour and a half per week. Why did we take this decision? Just because it was, you know, the context in Jordan, and for example, the possibility for some of our students to participate in some field visit with some of the organization, or to contribute more consistently to the work of the organization where they were doing where their placement was not possible in just 5 hours. So we decided to, and actually even the organization asked us to give them more time so that the students could participate more in their working life. So again, just as Rachid was saying, in Jordan too, we try to customize the placement experience as much as possible. So what we do is asking students to send us their resume and their interest in the kind of organization that they would like to do their placement with, and we try to match that. We have, of course, a number of organizations that have been working with us for the past few years. We have, and we have selected and we have continued working with them also according to the syllabus, of course, and the kind of themes that we want to discuss in class. So, of course, we have organizations that are working on women and gender issues. We have organizations, of course, you know, given the Jordanian particular situation, we have organizations working with refugees. What we try to do, for example, is to allow students to have different experiences. So we have 2 different organizations working with refugees. One of them is mainly working with Syrians, for example, and the other one is working with other minorities, so that in class we can actually discuss the differences, you know, between the approaches, and, you know, for example, how funds are directed, you know, how much, you know, what's the different access to funds demands that these organizations have according to the specific, refugee communities that they are serving, so that we can try to critically engage with these dynamics. We have organizations working on archaeology, which is one of our main class, of course, during the in-class seminars, in order to understand, for example, how also tourism and archaeology are contributing, to the transformation of society, culture, but also, the construction of identity and at the national level, and so many other things. So yes, we have this organization that are our main reference. Of course, every term we inform them that we might or might not have students, because again, as Rachid said, we then select the organization each single term according to the preferences that our students send us even before arriving here. Our students then have an interview with these organizations, and if they are happy with the organization, if the organization is also happy with our students, we move on with the placement. Also, the tasks that our students might have in the organization differs, and are different, according to the needs of the organization and to the kind of work that the organization does. We have, for example, this term, we have a student who specifically asked for a placement in an organization or in an institution that was working on economic issues in Jordan. And we do have actually one of the best consultancy company in Jordan that cooperates with us, and we were able to send our student to the placement there. Some of the work is actually supporting just with editing and drafting and so on. Some other organization might have more engaging tasks, such as, for example, drafting proposal or being on the field with the social workers that they send, for example, in arranging their activities. We have one American international organization that works with refugees through sports, and our students usually support the coaches while they have these trainings for their for the women attending these courses there. So yeah, we try to combine everything, the relevance of the themes and the work that is done by the organization according to the syllabus as we design it, needs and preferences of students, and availability on the ground for the organization.
Mjriam and Rachid, do you? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I might add some just for the task. I missed this part. So what Mjriam said works for us too. So like now we have students who work on students who work with the think tank, and the think tank has 3 projects, like women in technology, reforming migration laws, and one women's empowerment economically. So each student is placed on a project. And project consists of attending conferences, meeting, writing reports, and publishing and helping the supervisor in the international. So these are international projects. The one there is another student who works with OPAS, which is the Pan-African NGO, part of the African Union, founded by the African Union to work on HIV issues related to Sub-Saharan Africa. So the students works directly with Dr. Bouteina, who is a medical doctor and the president of the association. On first, she did front desk, like now in the issues, the pressing issues or the client who came to OPAS. But then later on, she works on statistics and accountability issue with Dr. Bouteina, but at the same time overshadowing, because it's like a student who does medicine, overshadowing Dr. Bouteina when they work with the client. So it's we have students in the past who worked directly with refugees, you know, like helping them in some basic English, but also understanding psychological, social, and other economic issues. We have students who worked in, you know, directly with the feminist NGO on gardening the old Medina, and they went there to have a safe space for women not to have violence. So we make sure that it's a project, local or international. It has all the ingredients of a project because the student has to learn, you know, something from the NGO, and as we say, juxtapose the two knowledges. So how we solve issues in Morocco, how an American would solve an issue, but then it's all by the end helping communities, you know, because we should forget that these are countries, are low-income countries, you know, and we have, you know, with COVID-19, you know, the issues have been even worse, you know, poverty is more, unemployment is more, refugee situation you can imagine is more and more, and we have a lot of pressing issues. And I think from me, I see opportunities in the post-COVID for CBL. So I think CBL classes, and I am reflecting just now, I did not, by the way, I did not prepare anything for the meeting, because this is a thing I do by heart, and it's a passionate work I do. And I work daily with local communities, you know, so that's my job as a researcher and as a facilitator of American students. So we should think that post-COVID, we need more students to come to CBL, you know. There are big opportunities for American students to learn pressing issues, you know, that have emerged during COVID or post-COVID, and that I'm sure in 1 year, you know, research, scholarship, and international donors will be ready to fund this new project, because these are pressing issues that will create instabilities in some low-income countries, including like the case of Morocco and Jordan. We are already witnessing this, by the way, emerging. So I think the CBL class would be more diversified, and we will have more issues that will entertain the students and will bring them like fresh knowledge that will, you know, the word now is like we are talking about the global south and, you know, the global north, but I think there is a hybrid systems now everywhere. So scholarship would change for sure, and this will be impacting the whole Middle Eastern study. And I think, Dr. Elena, we should also reflect on the new Middle Eastern studies that will be emerging post-COVID, and the new scholarship and the new theories for sure. Okay, thank you guys. I stopped.
Thank you both so much. No, inshallah, I mean, we can hope for something new coming out of this in Middle Eastern studies. Sometimes I wonder. Do you both have time for one more question? It's an important one. And for those of you, I mean, we've had such a wonderful discussion here this morning. And so many of you are still hanging in there, but please feel free to go if you have to go. But this one's really critical. And I think that the three of us can actually address this in different ways. And so I wanted to put it out there. So for those of you who can hang in. So I love what you said about students reflecting on their experience. How much pre-reflection do you do? How do you have students reflect after? And how do you conduct conversations along the way? And I think now what's really what I wanted to point out about this one as well is that the person who is asking is not in a university context, but in a in a pre-university context. And so for my part, I just wanted to say this is an excellent question, and I think it's something. This is much easier to do with. We have a lot of high school students, 9 through 12, on other programs that we have now. We don't have a CBL class per se in those programs, but the approach is universal. So all of these, we may call it a different thing from program to program. Processes may differ a little bit, but like the methodology is the same from program to program. Age appropriate, of course, and all sorts of things, but personally, I find this really challenging with university students. in particular ways. And some of this is just how the process works. Like the high school students who come to us, they're on particular programs, they're in our care for particular reasons, where that reflection is already built in many ways to the programming, to the courses, to all the everything we do in a holistic way, which makes it so much easier. And we just apply our methodologies and our falsafa, and there we go. With the university students, it's really a challenge. I mean, we do try to set this, we have responsibility as a provider of these programs to offer some kind of programming before and hopefully after the programming. But our primary relationship, and I'm speaking as somebody who works in this particular idiom on the US side, our very particular relationship is with the university as a quote unquote client, right? And they have their own processes and their own pre-departure programming. So, and it's very hard to get the attention of university students for so many reasons, right? It was hard before COVID. Now pile all of the things that have been going on in this country and everywhere over the past almost 2 years. And it's very, very hard to get them to pause and do the work on, we try to frame this with identity and intersectionality, from the get-go. They don't always engage with those things, and we can't force them, and in a lot of ways, to be frank, we depend on our university partners to do some of this, right? Like, you would hope that university students come to our programs having had that kind of reflective approach in their coursework and as they prepare to study abroad, and for a whole host of reasons that are not divorceable from equity. Some universities do this in a much better way than others. And depending on how well they do or don't do this kind of reflective, have this kind of reflective aspect to their programming, says a lot about the potential for success or failure of us trying to do it. We don't get a lot of it generally outside of CBL with our university students. High school students, very, very, very different sort of thing. And Rachid or Mjriam, do you want to jump in there?
Okay, Mjriam, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's everything you said is really true, and I would say that this has been one of the main challenges, actually, at least for me, for a long time, because self-reflection is at the core of the course eventually, because we can't even have a serious political analysis or sociological analysis if we are not actually able to engage in this kind of self-reflection. And if we cannot make that that effort, that can really then allow us to see things in a different and more critical perspective. So I should say, though, that I mean, maybe because I'm excited now that we have students after like a long time, I can see that the way we are approaching at least the CBL course is somehow allowing for more space, let's say, to I don't even want to say guide, but just to let the student understand the relevance of sharing some more reflection. So we actually started by asking students to actually write reflections on their experience in the placement, and we actually encouraged them to write even about any kind of reflection they would have, like have a diary on any kind of experience they have, on the ground, being in Jordan, and connect it to the readings that we were discussing in class. I should actually say that a very, very important, fundamental role, is the role of our program director, in Jordan, is the program director, right? The title, sorry, I'm not good with titles. Mirna, who actually spent a long time just like talking to our students, making sure that they feel, you know, free to share any thought they have, any complaint, and, you know, and therefore, you know, the trust that we try to build with our students is in this sense very important. Because the first thing, for example, the CBL class, the first thing we do as soon as we enter the class, even before, you know, starting, you know, and seeing what readings we are discussing is, okay, so what happened this week at your placement? How do you feel about it? What would you say about it? What kind of readings is this bringing to mind? What kind of analysis, you know? And the other very important thing is our course in Jordan, our very first class starts with this kind, you know, readings that are specifically addressing the needs of self-reflecting on our positionalities at different levels. So we start with Orientalism, we start with voluntarism, we watch videos, we engage with this kind of material, and we make sure that students actually understand that this is part of the course. And this is why the first thing we tell them, even before the course starts, so, you know, when they arrive and they have orientation, is this is why the course is going to be uncomfortable, because this course is not going to be okay if you are not ready to engage with this kind of reflection. And we try to do this, you know, also with other activities, like, you know, course trips in the city and so on. Maybe Rachid, you should go.
Yeah, I will jump there. So thank you, Mjriam. So I think that, you know, this is a thing we take very seriously in Amideast, you know, Morocco. So there is, of course, as Dr. Elena and Dr. Mjriam said, there is a pre-departure reflection, there is orientation on the ground, and there is the last session, we call it's a reflection session, you know. But in the CBL, it's all about reflection. I think all classes, it's a self-reflection because there is content. I divide the class into two parts. The first part is bringing theory, helping students, you know, frame their experience from a theoretical perspective. But then there is always the second half is students bringing stories from their placement, you know, stories, issues, incidents, any trivial. I told them just bring a trivial discussion. You know, you meet a person, he told you salam, you could not answer. Why? Then we bring the discussion, you know, and then there is a reflection on the cultural, intercultural, social. So it's a session. Every session there is a reflection. Pedagogically speaking, they have to write 2 essays. We call them reflection essays, reflecting on verbal or non-verbal situations they can come up. So we are now in the second reflection essay. They are still asking me what to write about, what stories shall I bring, you know. They can also bring, you know, there are students who brought stories from their home families. You know, I told them bring a story, they bring a story. We had a discussion last time, I remember, about the Holocaust, why some Moroccans do not recognize the Holocaust. Then we brought a whole debate about, you know, identities, different identities, sources of information in the Arab world, in the Middle East and North Africa. You know, do we filtrate the sources now with social media and everything? So then we brought all this. Dr. Mjriam talked about this, you know, intersectionality, transnationalism, different identities and different positionalities. So CBL class is a pure self-reflection class. And students, if without reflection, the CBL is not at all an experience, you know, because if you don't come up and produce knowledge about your experience as a student, it's not a good experience in the CBL class. And this is in the orientation week, you know, our team in Morocco, you know, it's hard work, you know, it's 1 week, you know, full time working with your students, which become our students. And we have to make sure there is harmony in every single aspect of the program, from orientation inside Amideast to the classes, to host families, to streets. Imagine this is a 24-hour, 7 days job with the students when they are on site. And we make sure that, you know, every single detail has an input and there is an output from our staff, amazing staff, which are doing a great job. Okay.
Wow. Okay. Thank you. Thank you both again. We've gone a bit over time, but I really appreciate everybody's questions and everybody being here today. Thank you. And especially to so many of our wonderful staff. We're on this webinar. And I mean, as Rachid and Mjriam pointed out, this is 24/7 work. And it's, you know, it's been really something. You would oddly, the COVID times have been, and anyone who works in education abroad, you know, understands this. It's been the oddest you would think that like not having students on site for a long period of time would result in less, but in so many ways it gave us more, right, of both good and bad. You know, the workload didn't go away because the students weren't here, but the best part, the reason why we all do this is because students are here. Right? And thankfully they're here again, and long may it last. Thank you, Dr. Mjriam, Dr. Rachid, for this wonderful conversation. Thank you all, colleagues near and far, wherever near and far is relative to you. We hope you enjoy the rest of your week, and you know, everyone stay as safe as possible. And thank you again for being here, for your time, for your interest, for your support. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us.
Nice to talk to you.
Nice talking with you as well. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.